Welcome back, episode 12 of Unedited. It's so good to be here together. What's happening? What's going on?
My equipment's falling apart.
Your stuff's falling apart.
It is.
Right when we started.
All
Well,
right.
I'm Ethan. You're
Jordan.
We're back together.
It's good to be back together.
Reunited,
eh?
and
Yeah.
it feels so good.
It feels like it's been years, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, we've both been quite, we've missed each other a lot over the summer. Like, you were on holidays, I was on holidays, I was at camp, you were...
Yeah. How was your holidays?
They were good.
Yeah.
Except I was sick the whole time.
I remember that. Yes. You told me that you were in, and like not just sick, but like kind of like out of it, you said, eh?
Yeah, so the first week I was like, it was brutal. Like I was like on the couch being a big suck and my wife was taking care of me, you know?
Good times.
Yeah.
Actually, not really. But
I always feel bad for that too. But
yeah.
And then, well, here's the other thing. Quick note. We have the luxury of me just being a big suck because we don't have kids. So,
Okay.
like, when I'm sick, my wife take care of me. You know, I take care of her when she's sick.
Yeah.
So we can, like, juice it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you have kids, you don't just get to be like, I'm out, I'm sick. Like, you still got stuff to do.
A bunch of stuff happening.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't too bad, but, you know, I felt a little bit better when we went out to our family camping trip, like out at the cabin. It's not really camping, but...
awesome.
And
That's
so that was nice for a bit.
That's as much camping as I want.
You're a glamper.
Cabin life, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right on. I feel that.
That's what I want to do.
And how about you? How were your holidays?
Oh, awesome.
Yeah?
I usually, like, sometimes I vacation, like, you take your mind off things a little bit, but this year was just, I didn't think about anything. I
Nice.
enjoyed Folk Fest, some good music for a whole weekend.
Nice,
and then every other day was just relaxing. Like, I actually really just took my mind off things and just really was able to put myself in that vacation mode this year.
Nice.
I can't always do that, and this year I was able to. So,
Awesome. That's really great to hear. Winnipeg Folk Fest, back in some old stomping grounds for you?
Love it. Yeah, 50th anniversary next year is going to be a big one.
Wow. You've been married 50 years.
No, Folk Fest is 50th anniversary. So actually, we did have our 17th just week and a bit ago. So.
Hey, congrats.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary, man.
Thank you.
That's cool. 17. So you guys are 10 years almost on the nose ahead of us.
I'm telling you. Eh? Is that what it is?
Yeah, because we're 7 this year. So that's
awesome.
like basically a decade ahead. That's kind of cool. I like that.
It is cool.
So you're still married?
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Okay, well, today we have a good show. It's going to be exciting. We've got some interesting things to talk about from our feeds, and then we're going to have some conversation about in the neighborhood and following up with How About You, where we hear from you guys, our listeners and viewers, and we give you something to talk about. But first thing we're going to do is In My Feed.
In My Feed.
So, Jordan, why don't you kick us off?
Okay.
What did you find in your feed this
Well,
week?
my feed is local this time because we started off this whole summer season talking about some of our favorite things that we do. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we mentioned was the fair. And just this past week, the Saskatoon exhibition was here in this lovely city.
Yeah.
And I was reading the Star Phoenix yesterday because I do this kind of thing still sometimes.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
But the big headline was attendance dips at Saskatoon exhibition, second lowest of the past decade. And so I was surprised by that to an extent because I thought, if anything, that fair was gaining traction. But if you look at the numbers, in 2019, they had 216,000 people come through the gate.
216,000
individuals. Individuals, yeah, come through that gate.
That is a lot.
That's a lot, yes. That's like more than most, like that's like several, that's like 4 or 5 moose jaws, like to compare it with a city, like a
the entire population,
decent small big city, right?
That's a good chunk of our city's population.
Oh, exactly. In 2020, it was canceled due to the COVID pandemic.
What?
In 21, they had 230,000.
Okay.
But listen to this though, and then in 22, 225, so a small dip.
Yeah.
23, 207. That's kind of a big dip.
It's a big dip.
And then 204 this year, 204,991. And so I was a little shocked by that because I thought, if anything, after COVID and stuff, that this stuff was kind of growing. And I started to think why the numbers maybe dipped. I think the weather didn't help. Did you remember the weather last week?
No, I do not remember
cold.
The weather. Was it?
Yeah, it was cold. Oh, you were camping, I guess, or something. Probably,
No, I had a cold. I was inside.
It was cold out though. Like we woke up last Thursday morning and it was +2.
Yeah.
And like Wednesday evening, I think it got down to 10 probably around the time the X would have been around there, like, 10 o'clock mark kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the next night got down to about 8. So it was cold. So I'm wondering if weather might have played a factor in that a little bit.
Okay.
I love that cold. It actually gave me an opportunity to jump in the hot tub first thing in the morning.
Yeah, okay,
I haven't done
okay.
that in 6 weeks because it's been nothing but plus 30s, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, attendance is going down. One of the big things that people were excited about was the zipper came back.
The zipper's huge.
Apparently,
man.
the zipper was missing like a few times.
Was
And,
it?
Like, yeah, it wasn't in the Regina X. It wasn't at Prince Albert, and apparently
Huh.
it did come here. But like, how can you have a fair without the zipper?
Well, last year the zipper was here because
I
I
think
went
so.
to the X last year and
Yeah.
it was definitely here
It
because
had to have
I
been.
was with a friend who rode it for the first time and he was stoked about it.
Did he enjoy it?
Yeah, guy turned out to be an adrenaline junkie.
Did
not
you
gonna
go on
lie.
it?
No.
Do you like
but,
rides?
no. Well, I don't mind rides. I just get motion sickness.
Okay.
So-
I liked them when I was a teenager, but now like even going on tilt-a-whirl like does me in for the day kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like I used to go on a lot more stronger stuff than that when I was a teenager or a kid.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
I only I dabbled as a teenager, but as a kid, I only did the tame stuff, and then I threw up one time after a tame ride as a kid.
Yeah.
And that shifted my perspective a lot, right?
which ride?
Sizzler?
Sizzler?
It was a
Scrambler?
tilt-a-whirl.
Oh, the tilt-a-whirl.
I loved
Oh my
the tilt. I
goodness.
would
Yeah.
ride the tilt-a-whirl every time
Me too.
at a fair as a kid.
Me too.
Because it was always just fun. But then the one time, what I probably did was got totally gassed up on fair food
Yeah.
and then hopped on.
And
right?
they got one
So-
of those spinny carts that just
exactly.
whips you around.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And people are leaning into it,
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so fun actually. But ever since then, I've not really been into it. So something like the zipper, where you're twisting and
Yeah.
the backward forward,
And flipping.
and I've heard too many stories of people
Yeah.
letting their load out,
Yeah.
their puke on it,
Yeah.
and then
Being stuck
it
in
like
that cage with
flies
it.
into people and stuff.
And themselves even.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a bad scene.
yeah.
So, well, and the other part about that ride is I had a buddy who went on it as a teenager, and you're stuck on it. Like, you're not getting off. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, those cages that they put you in are pretty enclosed. So,
Yep.
and the guy, like, below has to remember how long each person's been on. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not like he empties the ride and lets everyone on. It's like he does them by, like, shifts, right? So you could accidentally be left
Well-
on there for 10 minutes by accident if
Really?
he doesn't remember kind of your time. Yeah.
I thought
of
because
people
last
getting
year he
really
emptied
long
the whole
rides.
thing. Like he would empty and load every cart.
Okay, in Thompson they don't do that. In
Interesting.
Thompson he would do it individually. He would like in his head have it figured out. Like he'd have the carts numbered, and he'd know when this one got on. This I think he probably went by 1, 2, 3. Like probably went by the actual count, and tried to do it that way.
Wow.
But I've heard of people staying on that thing for a long time.
Be a long, yeah.
I wouldn't want to be on it.
No.
So I don't
No,
like.
no,
I'm
no,
not a fan of the zipper and
No.
of the X in general. We took the girls. I went Thursday night for some music and stuff, and we took the girls on Friday. And man, you do not go to the X to save money. I'll say that.
No.
Okay?
No.
And maybe that's part of the attendance dip in some ways. But like 3 hours in that place with 2 girls under the age of 8, like you're looking. And we tried to keep it calm. You're looking at least 150 minimum.
Yep.
So and
Like, why did the girls are going to think, why'd you take us here if we can't have these things or whatever?
exactly,
Right? Like,
exactly.
what's the point?
And the
Why
point
can't
is
we
to,
ride
and the
rides?
point is
And
to
why
have
can't-
that fun, right? But we
Yeah.
didn't eat any food except for we got the girls like their snow cone and their cotton candy.
Yeah.
And
Cotton candy at the fair is just so different.
Awesome.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
it's the best
Love
thing.
it, yeah.
And we got them their 50 tickets, but it cost us 50 some to even enter the gate, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So it adds up. It's a pricey experiment. So it kind of in a way blows my mind by the amount of people who do 5 days of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because that could really add up. in
Yeah,
the end.
like you have to diversify if you're doing that. I know when I was in high school, we volunteered at our exhibition. It was called the Canadian Lakehead Exhibition because it was in Thunder Bay.
Yeah.
And we would volunteer to clean up, and then we would get tickets. So we'd be the people walking around with the buckets, sweeping things up, emptying trashes, taking a gator around to bring bags out, just
Yeah.
keeping it tidy. But then we would get tickets in the evening when we were off our shift, and we could take a couple rides or whatever,
Well, that's
and they would give us our lunch. So like those times were fun because you just sampled small things like one night at a time or whatever, and we would
Yeah.
spend the whole week there. You work all day and then play all night,
Yeah.
And so like I could get that, but now I go back and I'm like, I don't like there's nothing there for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm just walking around. Last year we went with some students from our youth group, and I brought some youth leaders, and these two students who had never been before to an exhibition at all, and like not ridden any rides before, they got like those super passes, right? Where you just ride everything and like as much as you want. And I was like, guys, I don't know if this is gonna be worth it. Like, what if we're only here for 2 hours? And they got them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm leaving in an hour. So I left, but one of our youth leaders stayed, and he went on rides with them for like 4 hours.
That's crazy.
They just lived it up.
Do you remember what the lines were like? 4 rides?
Long.
Yes.
Really
because
long.
that's one of the complaints I heard this year, actually. I ran into some people on the Thursday night when I was there. And like you could wait a good 20 minutes a ride, eh?
Yeah.
Just to jump on something. And
Well,
so,
if you average out 200,000 people over how many days?
Yeah.
What's the average attendance per day?
Wow.
What's the capacity per
Probably,
ride?
Probably close to 40,000. Yeah, 40,000, 50,000 a day, I guess, right? So
Yeah, so I mean, that's intense.
that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people to try and get through. The one thing that I find that a lot more like adults are interested in is like the shows. Because there's some impressive shows there.
Yeah.
Like Sloan was there.
I would say that their music lineup was the strongest Saskatchewan music lineup this summer.
Really?
Yeah. They had Sloan, they had Sam Roberts, they had Country, so they had the Rec Laws, they had Tom Cochran, who honestly I heard, and I've never seen him, but I heard he puts on a killer show still, right?
Okay.
So who else was there? A band called The Beaches, who are I guess popular. Amanda Marshall, who always draws a crowd, right? The Trans Canada Highwaymen, who sadly I had to miss the Wednesday night, so I had to make a choice because I only slept 4 hours the night before.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, if I go to this, I'm gonna wreck myself for the next day, kind of.
Oh,
thing,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So
you gotta watch your sleep.
But yeah, the entertainment's big. They got that Bash Derby, that Crash Basham Derby. You ever watch that on Sunday?
Nope.
Awesome. I'm not usually the kind of person who's into that, but watching cars at like 80K smash right into each other is quite a sight to see.
I've been to something like that.
It's a lot of fun, yeah.
It's a unique experience in
Oh.
just like the human destructive tendency where
I
you're just
didn't
like,
realize
I
how
wonder
much-
what would happen if cars just crumpled into each other.
Exactly. I didn't realize how much I needed to see it. You
Yeah.
know, when I did go see it, I saw it about 10 years ago, and it's not the thing you need to go to every year or anything.
It's
but,
like no consequences though, right?
no.
It's like bumper cars with the real cars. Well, I
Yeah.
mean the cars are obviously modified,
Yeah.
but like still.
And the best is there's usually a driver who has to play hero. And
Yeah.
he just destroys things, including himself, right? Like he's willing to take the hit to be the entertainment for the evening, right?
Yeah, he just goes hard, eh? They're just like,
man.
hey, you're the main character for tonight. Just go nuts, buddy.
Some of this stuff I thought, like, how's this person walking out of this vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So it is a sight to see. And there's lots of people, like they have lots of vendors in there now, dog shows, things for the kids. Like I guess there is quite a bit in there if you want to spend a day at the exhibition/fair.
Well, I'd imagine, like, I'm not an economist, but I would imagine that the exhibition has got to be good for our local economy.
Huge.
Just having people come into town,
Hotels, all
spending
sorts
more
of
money.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know in terms of how you know about fair stuff more, but in terms of like how the profits are made in these events. But I'm assuming there's taxes taking place and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, that's good for our province.
I think so.
It's good for our city.
Yeah.
But let's hope that the attendance keeps to go up then. I mean, as long as people are safe and having a good time, which it seems like you told me that it seems like the police were taking very seriously making it a safe space this year.
Oh, it was crazy actually. Like when I pulled in there on the Thursday night, they had their own little station set up. And there were about 20, 25 vehicles sitting out there. So
yeah, wow.
So yeah, you know what? I felt good there, right? Like, you know, you sometimes hear some of the unfortunate stories that happen at some of these fairs, like macings and different things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But no, it felt pretty good.
Yeah.
So
If you've
good job, Saskatoon.
Yeah, right on.
It seemed like a pretty good fair.
Yeah.
I think there unfortunately were a few incidences. I didn't catch them all, but and some there unfortunately was too though. So hopefully we can clean that up and make sure it even becomes even that much more better for the next time. Yeah.
Well, I heard somebody got stabbed
That's not good.
in Toronto.
Oh, there you go.
Unrelated to the exhibition, but yeah. Anyway.
Random discussion.
Why are you laughing at that?
I'm not, because the way you did it.
That's not funny, Jordan.
I know it's not funny.
Somebody got hurt.
It's the way you did it that you know why I'm laughing.
Sorry, I set you up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's local news. I like it. I like talking about what's happening actually like around our neighborhood. You know what I mean?
As do I. Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it too, because we
it
talked
was
at the
good.
beginning of summer about this, and you
Yeah.
were like, "This is one of my favorite summer things."
Yeah, I typically like the small town fairs. So like we missed that one because we were out of the city.
Yeah.
But we ended up deciding like just last minute, let's go to the X this year, right? Like I always
Yeah.
go by myself to go check out like the entertainment, like the music and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was good. We had a blast.
Do you go to like Buster Days in Martinsville, or what's the Warman one called?
Yeah, the Warman Fair.
Warman Fair?
It's chill. Yeah, it's nice and chill.
You go to those?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and in Winnipeg they have a fair set up all year round called Tinkertown.
Yeah.
And the girls just love it. Tinkertown is like phenomenal for what you pay to get in for,
Is it?
right? Because
Yeah.
it's got almost as much rides as like some of these X's.
Yeah.
And everyone now, instead of buying tickets and stuff, they simplified it. Everyone pays $22 at the door, no matter what age you are.
Yeah.
But you could ride anything you want, so it's free rides.
Yeah.
And you just pay for your food. And it's actually quite an affordable
Interesting.
experience for
No,
families.
Winnipeg has some stuff going on, dude. Like
I'm
seriously,
saying,
I
man.
think Saskatoon will get to their level at some point, but they'll probably always be a few steps ahead of us here.
Yeah, there's
They're,
lots
they
happening
got
there.
they got amenities. Okay, well, I want to ask you a question in regards to my feed item. Okay,
Okay.
what would you do, or what do you think about food? What are they called? A food? Oh no, food banks.
Yeah.
Right. So food banks that provide food for people who are either in low income situations or don't have any income or whatever, places that we could all empathize with somebody ending up in life. What would you think about a food bank handing out 300 milligrams of methamphetamine?
Probably not a good thing.
Okay.
So
Sorry, it's not 300 milligrams. That's a wrong number. What I mean is 300 times the normal level somebody would take for a hit.
Oh,
and
okay.
this is something that actually happened
Oh wow.
in New Zealand.
Oh my
So
goodness.
in Wellington, a charity working with homeless people
Yeah.
unknowingly distributed candies that were filled with a potentially lethal dose of methamphetamine. So this is coming from AP News. And they are saying that a normal, what's the word? Not normal. I'm trying to use the words that they used in their article. A donor from the community brought in these candies.
Oh no.
And they think that they must have thought it was just normal candies
Yeah.
because it turned out to be methamphetamine basically packed into a candy size little brick sort of thing.
Okay.
And so it was, like I said, 300 times the normal level that somebody would take and could be lethal. And so there's just this investigation going on, but apparently it's a normal practice to disguise, drugs as innocuous goods, which is like, I think we get that.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is that it found its way into somebody's hands who probably unknowingly, like we don't know, but probably unknowingly donated this because these candies would be like $608 USD per candy.
I was just gonna say it'd probably be expensive. Yeah.
So hundreds of dollars per candy.
Anybody hurt from
Who's
this story?
donating these unless they're dumping or something? So some people were hospitalized,
Okay.
but apparently they had to track down like almost or up to 400 people to try and just be like, hey, we accidentally gave you meth.
Yeah.
Isn't that insane?
That is nuts.
So they're trying to figure out exactly what happened, but they think it's just like a mix-up. They think it's just something where, from what I can read in this article anyways.
Got in the wrong hands and someone donated it out of the goodness of their heart and it ended up being something terrible.
Yeah. So
Okay.
somebody apparently reported it as like a funny tasting candy.
Oh.
And dude, like no doubt. 'Cause I don't imagine, this is the thing. Okay. Speaking of drugs, especially if you're somebody who's been clean your whole life and you take even morphine at the hospital, it's something that can like send your system into a crazy shock.
React very strong, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, for people who maybe have had other substances in their system, you might be able to take something stronger and not like I've heard in some hospitals where like if there's a patient who comes in who has had other systems through their or other substances through their system, like their dosages have to be high or whatever. But could you imagine the shock if you've never done anything and then you take like 300 times what somebody would take to like get a normal hit?
Oh, I can't imagine it.
Like I can't even imagine surviving.
I'm so glad to hear people did survive that because that sounds like that could be very
It's
catastrophic.
horrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
And you think about the psychological impact of that. Like,
Oh, for sure.
I don't know if you've ever had even just something where like your adrenaline boosts, like even say it's something like heat exhaustion or a really bad fever where you start to get delirium or whatever. Like when chemicals and like your brain is out of whack, like it's a scary feeling, right? To feel like sort of like disassociated or put out. So I just really feel for anybody who is going to a food bank looking to 100%. Get just what they need to get by and running into that problem. I also feel for the charity because that's nobody like... Well, unless somebody masterminded this, which I do not think is the case, like nobody would do that on purpose. So it's just a horrible accident, like a horrible thing to happen.
Yeah, and it'll reflect bad on them regardless of what happened, right? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting actually now because when you do donations now to like different kinds of community projects with food, I remember when I was up in Thompson, they would do like a community Christmas dinner. And it started to get difficult probably about like 10, 15 years ago because before people used to be able to bake these turkeys at their house and then bring them down. Mm-hmm. But I think the laws or something changed, or at least the protocol changed, where you actually had to bake everything in-house. Yeah. Like because probably to avoid something like this, probably to avoid any kind of contamination or to make sure that safe cooking practices were used, right? They started just cooking everything at the actual hall where they were hosting this dinner, right? Yeah. And what you're talking about, you know, you think you'd be super safe just donating packaged goods, right? But but obviously not. Obviously, there's still a risk, and you just never know sometimes what's going to be in there. So the world we live in has, oh man, leave it at that.
Well, this is the sort of thing that's probably going to be circulated again around Halloween. Yeah, where people are going to be like, watch what your kids are getting. Yes. Which I think is just a good idea, anyways. I mean, like you know, the police do like those safe check stations or whatever, right? Like they'll do like safe candy. Yeah. I think it's just smart to be aware of that sort of thing because you don't know what you're getting from somebody and you don't know if they're aware of what they have necessarily. But I honestly think that this points out to like it makes me think two family members in my family recently have undergone significant surgeries where they were in the hospital and needing to have pain management and medication. And so the availability and the ease of access for them just being in a hospital to access like incredibly strong drugs and even being sent home with like a bottle of drugs for $20 or whatever is just like kind of alarming sometimes. So methamphetamine, I'm jumping from like an illegal street drug to pharmaceuticals, but the access of drugs in our current age is like really quite intense and quite, I don't want to say frightening because I'm not sitting here like this, we don't need to be scared of this, but it's something to be aware of, eh? Like,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, that's an interesting little story and kind of a bit of a downer, but
that's a strange story though, right? Like you sometimes look up these stories and you think that can't be real, right? But obviously it happens, and that's unfortunate. So
so I'm hoping that everybody's doing okay in New Zealand, and that the foundation that or the charity that ended up winding up in this situation, I hope that everybody's handling it well, recovering well, and making sense of it. So. That's the international news along with your local news. So now with In My Feed done, why don't we talk about some more local stuff? Let's do In the Neighborhood.
In the Neighborhood.
In the Neighborhood. Sounds good. This past week at church at the Neighborhood Church, Pastor Louis began a new series called Sharing Jesus. And pretty self-explanatory. He's talking about what it looks like to share your faith, what it looks like to go out and tell others about Christ. And I think it's a good topic, and it's a necessary discussion because I think for a lot of people, sharing their faith it either feels scary or it feels maybe too big for them.
Or maybe disingenuous?
I was just going to say, for some people, it might even feel pointless, right? Like they might not find the meaning in it per se, right? And so we're embarking on this series talking about what it looks like to share Jesus with people. And Pastor Louis brought up 4 reasons why we don't share Jesus. The 4 reasons were that we are afraid. Sometimes we're just afraid and we just don't want to go out. And I could sort of relate to that sometimes. Like, you know what I mean? Yep. Especially when I was new in my faith, you feel kind of like you're like this small kind of thing when you're trying to tackle a subject like that.
Fear of rejection.
Yeah. Well, the next one I was just going to say is that we don't feel qualified. Sometimes we just don't feel like we know enough, and like you need to know so much. We don't want to be pushy. We live in a society where Sometimes, we just want to not rattle any cages, right?
Yeah.
And then other times we're just complacent. And
Mm.
so those are 4 reasons why we don't share our faith. And so he was talking about this. He read a verse from the book of Colossians that has been a favorite verse of mine for a long time. It says, "Be wise in Colossians 4:5 says, "Be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you know how to answer everyone."
Mm.
And I've always loved that verse. I've always thought that verse rings true with me in how I want to live my life. And one of the big things that stands out to me is it says make the most of every opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of my thought when it comes to evangelism or sharing my faith is that, there are opportunities to do it, and oftentimes I miss them.
Mm.
And so whenever I read a verse like that, I think to myself, well, don't miss this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you catch this. So sharing our faith is what he talked about. He talked about 4 reasons we don't share our faith, and then he did mention 4 ways that can be helpful in sharing our faith. And he said use what you already have to share your faith. For example, if you have a boat, take someone fishing. 4-hour fishing trip, you have a lot of time to talk about what's important to you, right?
That's true. Yeah.
Take someone golfing, take someone to a hockey game, do something like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? He talked about inviting someone to church, bring someone with you, introduce them to the faith community.
Yeah.
And then he talked about sharing your own story and just remembering that your story is valuable. So when you think of sharing your faith, what thoughts come to your head? What do you ponder?
Yeah, I mean, maybe to address that feeling of like maybe we get a little bit of like imposter syndrome when we think about sharing with people that we know. Maybe like it's a coworker, maybe it's a family member or a friend, and you're like, I have this faith, but I don't feel qualified, or I'm afraid of rejection, or I don't like those reasons that you listed are great.
Yeah.
Maybe when we feel that, I think part of it might be because we just think like, is this appropriate? Like there's a big part of us that will send up a signal where we're like, is this going to be received well?
Yeah.
Is this going to be...
Is it the right time?
Yeah. Are people going to feel this in love, or are they going to feel this in like a weird religious pressure?
Yeah.
Like what's and it makes me think of hanging out with family and friends. I had a phone call with a family member recently, and I have a relationship with this family member where they've expressed to me recently and frequently that they respect my opinion, that they want to hear what I think, and that they actually call me to ask for advice. And they know that I reciprocate that. They know that I look to them for advice and for input, and we catch each other's blind spots,
Yeah.
So we have an established relationship where there's that trust. And in this relationship, I was on the phone with this person, and they were telling me about this situation. They're like, this person did this stuff, and it's so stupid. Why would they do that? It doesn't make sense. And, they're expressing what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so I hear them out, I listen, and I like empathize and connect with what they're telling me. And, but then at the end I was like, you know what? I think you might be wrong about this.
Yeah.
Like, I think that person might have a point, actually. So maybe you should, just food for thought. You should consider maybe this person's right. Maybe you need to change your perspective on this, because it kind of sounds to me like you're in the wrong on some of this. And so, that conversation didn't necessarily happen that bluntly. It happened over the span of like a 2-hour conversation, right?
Yeah,
so
you got to that point.
Yeah,
eventually.
we didn't just get right into it.
Yeah.
But I took the time and had the opportunity. And the reason I bring that up is not to be like, oh, how great of a conversation I had. I bring it up because all of us have those relationships. Like all of us have spoken with somebody and we felt comfortable to tell them what we think.
Yeah.
Or if you haven't, maybe that's a good challenge for you to start there in terms of just learning how to speak truthfully to people in relationship. And
It's true.
To put things on the line. When you're young, sometimes it feels like there's too much to lose in your friend groups.
Yeah.
And if you want to have mature relationships, you got to eventually get to that point where you're speaking truthfully to each other, not just to make each other feel good. Anyway, I'm digressing to a whole relationship conversation, but the reason I bring it up is because we understand that generally in life that we'll speak truth to people we love and that trust us. And I think if we sort of demystify the idea of talking about faith, talking about religion and our faith practices and spiritual behaviors, if we demystify that and just focus on it in the sense where, would you speak the truth to this person in the relationship that you have? Like, do you have a relationship for that? And then so you are allowed to
Yeah.
if you've been given permission to speak into somebody's life, you're allowed to.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
and you don't need to be afraid of them rejecting it so much as you would be afraid of them rejecting you, telling them they're wrong or that they're right, or, you know?
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
kind of make sense?
No,
like,
no, I'm with you.
we put faith in this other tier where
Yeah.
it's like, but that's bigger and heavier to talk about. But it's like, has anybody ever called you for advice before? Well, there's a person that you can be sharing your faith and spiritual outlook with, you know, and like sharing the hope of Jesus. Like
100%. And I find a lot of this, I think the key word you said there too is relationship, right? Hang out with people who are different than you. Like purposely do that. Do you know what I mean? Like I know it's a little tricky sometimes. And I know there can be some dynamics, right? But it's healthy, I think, to have people who can challenge your point of view. You could challenge their point of view, and in that you could have some moments where you could talk about what's most important. What I find often is in relationships with people, they'll often reach out when they're going through a tough time, and that often brings an opportunity to maybe pray or to maybe lend your support and to empathize and to come alongside them, walk with them, right? I have a good friend of mine who just one day, like, he knows I'm a pastor, and we never really ever broached that topic, but he just said, tell me about your story. Like, how'd you even get into this, right?
Yep.
So sometimes you'll just get that kind of opportunity, just to straight out, and then it's just literally what Pastor Louis was talking about. It's just sharing your story. It's just being authentic. This is where I was, and this is what happened to me. And when I turned 18, I had this moment, right? Went through this difficult time, and all of a sudden realized I needed Christ and accepted him, and and that's kind of where everything kind of took a shift from, right? But I do think it is in the context of relationship and those tough conversations that you talk about where people call for advice and stuff. There's opportunities there. So I love the words of Colossians 4. Just make the most of them. Be wise in the way you act towards people outside the faith, but make the most of every opportunity, and let your conversation be full of grace, right? Like at the end of the day, even if someone disagrees with you, this isn't us versus them. This is Jesus who loves all of us. And, that's a good mindset, I think, for Christians to keep, especially when we talk about things like this, where we can have a difference of opinion. Someone rejecting your faith, like, it's not an opportunity to get combative. It's just where they're at right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But walk with people, love them, journey with them, and let Christ lead you. Try not to take everything personally. But recognize, that if their life's going to change, God's going to do it anyways. And that's the other part, I think, is that Christians sometimes need to take the pressure off themselves. I think we go into these opportunities to share our faith thinking that we're the ones who are going to change someone's mind, when the scriptures clearly tell us it's the Spirit of God that can do that, right? So we're responsible just to be faithful and share our lives, share the truth, share our stories. But the Holy Spirit's going to do the work. So
it kind of makes me think of
takes the pressure off.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Exactly. You're not like trying to make sure you're pulling this person over a line.
Yeah. Well, and I've done that before. That's the hard part. Like, when I first came to faith, I thought it was my responsibility to make sure that
like you get
start
that person
thinking
saved.
like me. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it didn't work. It was tough, right? It was one of those things that kind of resulted in just frustration and whatnot. And it wasn't until later on where I recognized, we're not responsible for results. We're responsible to be faithful.
Yes.
In everything that God calls us to do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
It makes me think about maturity, and sometimes we don't want to talk about maturity, or people don't want to hear somebody talk about maturity because we stigmatize the conversation, where we think that if you're talking about being mature and immature, that it's bad or wrong to be in the immature spot and you better catch up and get mature. That's not how that works. Like when you see a baby take its first steps, you're not like, stupid baby sucks at walking. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You're like, that baby's walking. That's incredible.
It's amazing.
Like maturity is something that we all have to work on and get to. And I am immature in some areas and mature in other areas. That's how life works. So when it comes to looking at how we communicate with people, I think we also have to, like you said, hang out with different people. I think like there's a level of maturity that will make us more comfortable with some of these things, in the sense that we all start immature. We're going to be that baby toddling around, and then we work towards maturity. And so something that I remember when I was young, and I see this in a lot of young people I hang out with, so I'm talking like 20s and under, is like, and I'm not like older than that. I'm 30, right? So I'm not trying to be like, listen to me, old wise guy. I'm just saying this is something I recognize from my experience and people around me, is that when you're younger, you really feel like you have to have similarities with people to hang out with them.
Mm-hmm.
Or you want to be around the funniest people or the best looking people or the most interesting people. Or, you know, if you're a golfer, well, then my friends are going to be people that are into golf as well, you know? And there's nothing wrong with having friends that are the same interests as you or whatever. But
absolutely.
it is an immature stance to think that the only people in your life should be people that are similar to you.
I agree.
And the maturity that we gain from thinking more along the lines of, well, honestly, if you just recognize that if when you go through life, if you surround yourself with more diverse people, like you benefit so much.
Huge.
And it's much more enjoyable than just being around a bunch of people that think the same as you. And it's much more expansive. And so when we look at, again, that's like just a normal life analog to sharing our faith, where like the more that we mature, we all start as that little baby toddling around in the living room. The more that you mature, the more that these things become more comfortable, the more that we press ourselves. But we have to recognize that we start from a place of immaturity so that we can work into it, right?
I agree 100%. 100%. And I think the more you grow in that maturity and you're able to surround yourself with people, pick a passionate issue that somebody is the exact opposite of you on. Politics.
Yeah.
That's one that could really divide us, right?
Yeah.
But the more you can hang out with someone who thinks radically different than you and still learn to love them and still love that relationship and not let those little things ruin it, like to me, that's a win. That's such a win in life because it sharpens you, sharpens the other person. It helps you grow in grace. It helps you grow in your ability, I think, to empathize and to show mercy to people and to really just give people a break sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes when people don't... aren't like us. There's a human tendency sometimes to be like, well, they'll figure it out eventually, or they don't got it together, right? But maybe differences of opinion and stuff like that. Maybe those are the exact relationships that God calls us into.
Yes.
And
yes, and I've gleaned so much from relationships with people that like are diametrically opposed to my views.
Yeah.
The people who are so opposite of me. When you talk to them, you glean so much more, right?
Agreed.
And shutting someone down. Okay, this is for all the listeners and watchers. I cannot I know Jordan and I both believe this adamantly. Shutting someone down is not anything.
No,
it doesn't do anything.
No.
It's not constructive at all.
No.
Your social media presence, if you're interested in shutting people down, that's not how these conversations will go, right? That's an immaturity that we can grow in, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you shrink away from what you believe.
No,
believe what you believe. Have your convictions 100%. Don't hear us wrong on that discussion, right? But like at the same time, remember that everyone out there needs to be loved. And God loves you, and He loves the person who disagrees with you.
That's
and
right.
The person who has different thoughts than you, right?
That's right.
And so sharing our faith, I feel like it happens in the context of these relationships. I think it happens sometimes. There's various moments in life, but I think at the end of the day, we all have something that we could use to share our faith. That we all have a story that we can get across, right? And what was the second point? Oh yeah, you could always bring someone with you to church too. It's invite someone, bring them out with you. You go to the game with them, invite them to come with you sometime, right? And maybe they'll catch something from what God wants for them in the middle of that service. So
absolutely,
yeah. So I was in the neighborhood this past week. I'm looking forward to the rest of the series and kind of unpacking this a little bit. I think it's important to talk about because I think sometimes we talk about now. Go out and share your faith, but never actually equip people or talk about the what ifs. There's a lot of I think a lot of people have a lot of questions and maybe even some anxiety and some hesitancies and some fears maybe with that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's good to put it on the table and look at it from a different lens or two a few weeks of the year and just glean maybe how this could become less force and more like a practical lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah, thanks for bringing that so succinctly, Jordan. That's a great conversation about that. And I wasn't here for the sermon.
Yep.
But it sounds like somebody, one of those I have to go catch on YouTube.
It was
later,
a good one,
so.
Yeah.
Right on.
Good on
That's
you,
awesome.
Pastor Louis.
Well, that's in the neighborhood. Now, why don't we do How About You?
How about you?
How about you?
How about you? How about it?
How about it? So last week we talked about Cheris was with me, and we talked about ice cream, and we talked about ice cream either maybe we could parlay just for 2 seconds here.
Sure.
Cup or cone?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, really?
But if you had to pick one though.
I love my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll even go so far as to say my favorite ice cream
Mm-hmm.
is whatever they call it. It's named different things, different places. Tiger tail, whatever.
Oh, seriously?
In a waffle cone.
In a waffle cone, okay.
So
you like
good.
the cones, eh? So me and Cherish debated this, and she had some good points for
Did she?
She did.
Did she really,
She really
though?
did.
I'm
Yeah,
just
about
kidding.
the cone.
I'm just joking.
The cups for me, I like how there's a bit more convenience with the cups. You're not committed to the whole thing right there and then. You can save it. There's a little less drip, right?
Yeah.
But I actually maybe prefer the cones myself too, just
Yeah.
in a way, because they're so tasty, and I don't know, it's
Yeah.
old school, right?
Yeah.
But
Although a dipped cone
yeah.
is like you can't beat a dipped cone.
A dipped cone.
If it's a dipped soft serve cone
Yeah.
in just a classic junky
Yeah.
like styrofoam cone, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Those like those cones that like what are they even made out of? You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's like
It's sawdust
quintessential. That's its own thing. You can't put that in a bowl. You can't
No.
compare it to anything in a bowl.
No, you got to eat it just the way it is.
Yeah.
And people and like stores have upped their dip game, because it used to just be chocolate dip.
Yeah.
Now there's like blue raspberry dip. There's like raspberry
Dairy
dip.
Queen
there's
has like a cotton candy one.
yeah, like a green dip going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
like
Yeah.
like there's dip for everyone. Eh?
Which is awesome.
yeah.
I mean, I just love a chocolate dip, though. It's classic.
Yes,
but
I
I
do.
love that they're, living it up. But
Yeah, getting their dip on, right?
Yeah. You know
But-
what I did this summer? Can I just say this? We go up to Aquadeo, which is like where we have a like a cabin for the family.
Mm-hmm.
And close to it is Koshin. There's a little ice cream shop there. And we like to go there for our ice cream, whatever. And I would always get 2 scoops in a waffle cone, but it's too big because the
Yes.
top piece is like almost falling off. We're talking hard scoop, right? So the top piece is like melting and falling off and whatever. By the time you get to the bottom of the cone, there's a bunch of melted ice cream in the bottom. You're basically drinking it, you know?
yeah.
So it gets tricky. But what I did, and I think you should try this the next time you get like a hard scoop, is I asked for a bowl as well.
Yeah.
I just let that
yes.
top scoop plop into the bowl.
Yeah.
I eat the ice cream like normal, but then I get to eat another scoop
You
in
get
a
the
bowl.
best of both worlds.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I would like that.
Yeah.
We're going to reference one comment quickly, because you brought up your favorite flavor of ice cream there just a second ago.
I did.
And one of our listeners said Tiger is a great kind of ice cream. It's one that I don't have often, but appreciate it when I do. One place that I used to go to in Saskatoon was Noodle King and Ice Cream Queen on 2nd Avenue, a little south of 33rd. Unfortunately, it shut down, I think, last year sometime. They made good gelato there. I really like raspberries, so I always try the raspberry flavor. I've never tried Fable, so I might have to stop there sometimes. Thanks. So this person also likes the Tiger, kind of like you.
Yeah.
But also gave us a couple recommendations. Have you ever been to Fable?
No, but everybody talks about it. I think
Yes.
it's expensive, though.
It can be, maybe, yeah. But they make good coffee, good ice
Yeah.
cream. I brought up my favorite place is actually right in Martinsville. It's these young guys who started this little place called Cones. It's like the rec center area, and
Really?
there's a little building there. Have you never gone?
No.
You're gonna
Never
have to
even
go.
heard of this
You're gonna have to
before.
go to Cones. So
Okay.
it was started by a couple. I think they were 16.
Wait. It's in the park.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've gone past that a million times
Yeah.
on bike rides and
Yeah.
runs. I've never stopped.
I think
though.
they were 15 or 16 when they started. They got a
Huh.
loan from their dad.
Yeah.
They made enough in the first weekend of business to pay him back his loan.
Wow.
And they've been doing this now for years. And John Gormley had them on his talk show to talk about like their business and success.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. Probably my favorite
Wow.
ice cream place around.
I mean, it's packed. Lots of times
Always.
when I go on my rides and stuff, I'm avoiding it so I don't
Yeah.
go through the line and stuff, right?
Yeah. And-
if I'm thinking of the same place, it's in Kinsman Park.
Yes, it's that little brown building.
Yes.
Looks like a cabin
Okay.
kind of.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it has like a little like a hooded seating area kind of, and then you sit outside on tables.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly where it is.
Wow.
And if you're one of these people who finds that ice cream places kind of cheap out sometimes on the scoops, that's not the place.
Really?
This place, man, they just load it on.
I'm gonna walk there and
you
do
get
that.
a small one, and you're like, "Holy, this is small," kind of thing.
That's a 2.5 kilometer walk from my house, so I'm gonna walk there and have one.
You
That's
should.
great.
Yeah, and I suggest whatever the one is that has. I forget the name of the ice cream, but it's like it looks like a rainbow color.
'Kay.
But it's got little like fizz like candies in
Pop
it.
Rocks
Yes. Yeah. Whatever that's called is
Interesting.
phenomenal. So look for it.
See, I
next time
wouldn't
you're
want Pop Rocks in my ice cream.
there. See, I like all the kids flavors though. I'm into all like the rainbows and the super kids and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. As
Yeah.
we're more sophisticated people, probably go for the cookie dough or the mint chocolate. So
Okay, so here's an what's the word? An unpopular take is that I think sometimes you go to these ice cream places and hard scoop ice cream is just hard scoop ice cream.
yeah.
Like unless they're doing something crazy, if you can get the same ice cream somewhere else for less because it's less bougie or whatever. Like Homestead
Yeah.
in Saskatoon. It's big, right? Is
Yeah.
that the name of it?
Yeah,
It's-
that's the one.
And I've gone there and I've waited in line and I've got my ice cream and I thought, yum, ice cream. And then I've thought, well, this is just like all the other ice cream I've had.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like sometimes when something's like big because it's popular,
Yeah.
I'm like, do they have a different flavor or something that other
no,
places don't have?
I think for the most part, it's all the same. Like there's probably
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 different types of ice cream you can buy.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And actually, my sister-in-law left a half-eaten tub of Ben and Jerry's in my freezer from when she visited us.
There you go.
And I never have Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah.
But I was like, she left it here. I'm eating this.
It's
So,
good.
yeah, and it was even non-dairy. But I was like, dude, like, we should buy Ben and Jerry's more often.
Yeah.
So inexpensive compared
Yeah.
to like,
Yeah.
what you would get for a couple scoops.
Oh, for sure.
Anyway, okay. Let's not talk more about ice cream because I'll keep going forever. So.
All right. Well, let us know what you think. Did you go to the fair this year? Saskatoon EX. What did you think? Good experience, bad experience, get sick on a ride, maybe didn't go on a ride like me.
Yeah.
I didn't go on one this year at all. So
Cotton candy or mini donuts if you had to choose one?
That's true. What would you have? Cotton candy?
I would probably pick mini donuts.
Mini donuts, eh?
Because you can get cotton candy other places
That's true.
sometimes.
That's
so.
true. Mini donuts kind of are a
it's
fair
good.
staple.
It's classic.
So, yeah.
Yeah, well, let us know what you think. Thanks for joining us for episode 12. We'll be back next week for episode 13.
See you then.
Bye.
Unedited is a ministry expression of the Neighbourhood Church. Hosted by Ethan Andrews and Jordan McClellan. Produced by Ashley Drayton. Find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.